My friends, be careful how you treat people when you are sitting on high. Life has a peculiar way of turning the tables. 10 years earlier, in the bustling heart of Lagos, Nigeria, Chief Adekunle moved through the world like a king. Far from his world of air-conditioned offices, Mama Tunde knew only struggle. Their paths, though worlds apart, were about to tragically intersect at a busy junction. As Chief Adekunle strode by, Mama Tunde, desperate for her grandson, called out to him, but the chief, blinded by his own grandeur, saw only weakness. His words were a dagger. Go and work. I don't give my sweat to lazy people. Mama Tunde's spirit, already broken, crumbled further. Emeka clung to her, confused. Chief Adekunle adjusted his tie, walked away without a backward glance, convinced of his own righteousness. But even in the darkest corners, a small act of kindness can change a destiny. That night, as the rain beat down on their small shack, Mama Tunde made a vow. She took her last bit of savings and the wooden elephant she had carved with her late husband. While Chief Adekunle was flying to New York to expand his empire, Mama Tunde was praying for a miracle to get Emeka a better life. Years of hard work in the village paid off. They were leaving for America, with nothing but their dignity. New York was cold, grey, and completely indifferent to their arrival. They started at the very bottom, cleaning floors while others slept. Emeka saw his grandmother sacrifice and vowed he would never let it be in vain. Back in Nigeria, Chief Adekunle's pride had grown as large as his mansion. But pride is a heavy burden, and the first signs of trouble were beginning to show. In a single afternoon, the stock market bled red. The chief's billions began to evaporate like morning mist. Friends who once hailed him as a king suddenly stopped picking up his calls. Across the ocean, Mama Tunde hadn't forgotten her roots. She began selling her hand-carved elephants at a small New York craft market. A wealthy art collector saw the soul in her work. He didn't see a beggar, he saw an artist. Back in Lagos, the banks were less kind. They came for the house, the cars, and the pride. He was left with nothing but a single suitcase and the memories of a life he thought would never end. With the money from her carvings, Mama Tunde and Emeka didn't buy luxury. They bought a small, struggling textile factory. Ashamed to stay where everyone knew his name, Adekunle used his last kobo to fly to America, hoping for a miracle. But America doesn't care about your past titles. To them, he was just another man looking for a break. He walked past a gallery window and saw it, a carved wooden elephant. He scoffed, remembering the woman he once insulted. The man who once ordered 5-course meals now spent 12 hours a day scrubbing the plates of strangers. Walking home in the biting New York wind, he realized that the lazy people he once mocked were the strongest of them all. Mama Tunde didn't lead from a high tower. She walked the factory floor, knowing the name of every worker. Emeka, the boy who once sat in the dust, was now a graduate of the finest business school in the land. But even in America, the shadows of the past followed Adekunle. The small room he called home was about to be taken. For the first time in decades, the proud chief fell to his knees, not for power, but for mercy. Tunde Textiles was no longer a small shop. It was becoming a billion-dollar empire, merging African soul with American scale. He took a job delivering packages. It was honest work, but his body, once used to luxury, was breaking. One afternoon, his delivery truck stopped right outside a building that felt strangely familiar. High above, Mama Tunde looked out at the city, wondering if the man who once mocked her ever learned his lesson. The delivery company let him go. His back was too weak for the boxes, and his spirit was too tired for the hustle. Desperate for even a cleaning job, he found a crumpled newspaper in a trash bin. Tunde Global, hiring maintenance staff. He didn't have money for the subway. He walked 6 miles to the Tunde Global headquarters, his last suit smelling of mothballs. The lobby was grander than any palace he had owned in Nigeria. He felt like an intruder in a world he once dominated. He sat among young men half his age, all of them looking at him with pity. He was the man who refused to help waiting for help. The young secretary spoke to him with the same tone he once used on the streets of Lagos. Suddenly, the room went silent as the executive vice president walked through. Adekunle didn't recognize the face, but he felt a strange chill. He was called into a small office, not for a manager role, but for the night shift janitor position. He signed the papers. His new boss was a woman who started as a refugee. He was grateful for the floor he was about to clean. As he walked out, he saw the company logo clearly. A stylized wooden elephant. The room began to spin. The man who once wore gold-threaded egbadas now pulled on a grey polyester jumpsuit. To the world, he had become invisible. While the city slept, he scrubbed. Every tile he cleaned felt like a penance for every word of pride he had ever spoken. His supervisor ordered him to the top floor. "The CEO is working late," he was told. "Be silent. Be fast." He entered the penthouse office. The scent of expensive jasmine and African shea butter filled the air, the scent of success. He kept his head down, focusing only on the dust at his feet. He didn't want to see the face of the person he served. Then, a voice spoke, a voice that sounded like a haunting melody from a Lagos street corner 10 years ago. His hand trembled. The cleaning spray bottle slipped, clattering loudly against the marble floor. The silence was shattered. The high-backed leather chair spun around. The Queen of Tunde Global looked directly at the man who had once spat on her dreams. Adekunle didn't run. He couldn't. He stood there, a broken chief in a janitor's suit, facing the beggar he had forgotten. Mama Tunde stood up slowly. She picked up the wooden elephant and asked, "Do you still think my sweat is for lazy people?" Adekunle stared at the small wooden elephant. It was no longer just a carving. It was a mirror reflecting the cruelty of his younger self. He didn't make excuses. For the first time in his life, the chief spoke the truth. "I was a fool," he whispered. "I was blind." The door opened. Emeka walked in, a tablet in his hand and a cold fire in his eyes. He remembered the junction. He remembered the hunger. Emeka didn't see a janitor. He saw the monster from his childhood nightmares, now reduced to a man in a grey jumpsuit. Emeka stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "My grandmother almost died that day because you thought her life was worth nothing." But Mama Tunde raised her hand. One quiet gesture that commanded the entire room. "Enough, Emeka," she said softly. She looked at Adekunle. "I didn't bring you here to punish you, Adekunle. Life has already done that. I brought you here to see if you have truly changed." "I am firing you as a janitor," she said. Adekunle's heart sank. But then she continued, "And I am hiring you as an intern for our Nigerian expansion. But you will work under the person you once ignored. You will learn the business from the bottom up, starting in the village where I was born." The man who once bowed to no one, bowed low to the woman he once called a beggar. The revolving door had come full circle. Returning to Nigeria was not a victory lap. As Adekunle stepped off the plane, the heat of his homeland felt like a judge's breath. Following Mama Tunde's orders, he bypassed the luxury hotels of Victoria Island and headed straight for the rural village of her birth. His new office was a community centre built by Tunde Global. No air conditioning, no mahogany, just the sound of sewing machines and hard work. He was assigned to work under a young woman named Sarah, the top weaver in the village. He, the former CEO, was now the apprentice. His hands, once used to signing checks, were soon covered in blisters. Each one was a lesson in what it truly means to earn a living. At lunch, he sat on a wooden bench with the workers. He ate the same jollof rice from a plastic bowl that he used to refuse at the junction. One evening, an old man recognized him. "Are you not the chief who owned the tall buildings?" he asked. Adekunle simply replied, "I am a student now." Emeka sent weekly reports. No pleasantries, just business. He was testing Adekunle's endurance, waiting for him to quit. But Adekunle began to see things Emeka couldn't see from New York. He saw how to make the village factory 3 times more efficient. As the rainy season began, Adekunle didn't hide in a mansion. He stood in the rain, helping the villagers save the cotton crop. Lesson: never disrespect the people who hold the knowledge.
Adekunle realized that the village weavers were being cheated by middlemen. He used his old connections to build a direct bridge to the world. The lazy people he once mocked were now out-earning the city's top executives. The village was thriving, and the chief was their biggest cheerleader. A documentary crew from America arrived to film the Tunde global miracle. They didn't recognize the humble man in the dirt as a former billionaire. Back in New York, Emeka watched the footage. He looked for a sign of the old, arrogant chief, but he only saw a man who had finally found his soul. The village decided to gift Tunde Global their finest creation, a massive, hand-woven tapestry of the wooden elephant. Mama Tunde sent a message. It wasn't an order this time. It was an invitation. Come home, Adekunle. Your training is complete. The entire village gathered to see him off. They didn't call him chief. They called him brother. As he flew back to New York, he didn't look at the stock market. He looked at a photo of the village children. He stood before the Tunde Global Tower once more. He didn't feel like an intruder this time. He felt like a part of the foundation. The elevator ascended one last time. This time, he wasn't carrying a mop. He was carrying the future of 1,000 families. The Tunde Global boardroom was filled with the most powerful investors in America. They had heard of the mystery consultant who saved the Nigerian branch. Mama Tunde and Emeka entered first. But it was the man walking behind them that made the room go silent. One investor sneered. I recognize him. Isn't this the man who was cleaning the floors here last year? Mama Tunde didn't raise her voice, but her words carried the weight of a mountain. A man who has cleaned the floor knows the foundation better than the man who only sits on the roof. Adekunle stepped forward. He didn't show them spreadsheets of profit. He showed them the faces of the families he had empowered. I once thought wealth was about what I could take, he told them. Now I know it is about what you can leave behind. The room was silent for a long time. Then, the investor who had sneered stood up and began to clap. Mama Tunde opened a small box on the table. Inside was a key, not to a car or a house, but to the Tunde Global Foundation. But then, Mama Tunde whispered a secret that stopped Adekunle's heart. I didn't just help you because of karma, Adekunle. I helped you because of your father. She pulled out an old, faded photograph. It was a young Adekunle's father, giving a small piece of bread to a young, starving Mama Tunde. The boardroom faded away. Adekunle was no longer in New York. He was a child again, watching his father move through the dusty streets of a younger Nigeria. He saw his father stop for a little girl, thin and shivering in the rain. That girl was Mama Tunde. His father had told him, Adekunle, always cast your bread upon the waters. But as the son grew rich, he buried those words under piles of gold. Mama Tunde had spent 50 years looking for the son of the man who saved her. When she found him at that junction, she wasn't looking for a handout. She was looking for the man her hero promised he would be. Adekunle realized the beggar at the junction wasn't a coincidence. It was his final exam. And 10 years ago, he had failed it miserably. Mama Tunde stood up. Now, Adekunle, you will take your father's name and do what he would have done. You will head the Elephant Project to end poverty in the slums. The room of cold investors was no longer just about profit. They were moved by a story that spanned 2 continents and 3 generations. Adekunle didn't want a mansion. He asked for a small house in the very slum where he had once insulted Mama Tunde. Emeka stood by his side. The boy who hated him was now the man who would help him rebuild a nation. They walked down to the same junction where it all began. But this time, Adekunle wasn't walking past. He was stopping. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. Adekunle returned to the exact spot where he once lost his soul, but this time, he came to give it back. He saw a young boy, no older than Emeka was, trying to sell cold water to the passing cars. The cycle of poverty was still turning. Adekunle didn't just give the boy money. He knelt in the dust, looked him in the eye, and handed him a small card with the elephant logo. A few months later, the Adekunle and Tunde Vocational Center opened its doors. It was built on the very land the chief once planned to turn into a private club. Adekunle stood before his new staff. He didn't talk about profit margins. He talked about the invisible people. Mama Tunde visited one last time before retiring. She saw the man she knew he could be. Her debt to his father was finally paid in full. Emeka took the reins of the global empire, while Adekunle stayed in the trenches. The boy who was once a beggar was now the king, and the king was now the servant. Adekunle visited his father's grave. He placed the small wooden elephant on the headstone. I finally understand, Papa, he whispered. In New York, the Tunde Global Tower glowed in the night. It was no longer a symbol of wealth, but a lighthouse for those lost in the storm. Remember, my friends, your status is a shadow. It changes with the sun. But your character is a rock. Never look down on anyone, unless you are helping them up.